Welcome to part 2 of this Laminar Flow Design Spitfire Mk.XII conversion, and we're going to start in the cockpit. And this is the Barracuda Studios resin seat. Big improvement on the Tamiya seat. That gets cleaned up and that's put aside ready for paint, and then it's out with the wow stick. And this is what I do on all my Spitfire models, and that is drill out all the lightning holes, and the wow stick makes short thrift of this. Dead easy, little pen drill as you can see, and low speed, high torque, easy job. Some kit photo etch now. That's for the compass that sits below the instrument panel, and I'm just going to do a test fit here of the bulkhead, and that goes in nicely. Barracuda Studios sidewall means I'm going to have to remove some material from the kit. Just marked it out in red so you can see what detail needs to go. The easiest thing is just get a curved blade initially and just scrape that away. I did try a chisel, but it didn't really work, if I'm honest. The curved blade was much easier, and then I'll just go in and finish off with a sanding stick. And here is that Barracuda Studios piece, and that can eventually just slot in. Oh, nice. In order to use it, we need to remove some material from the kit part. And just this small bit at the top, that strengthening bar thing, that just gets sliced away with that curved blade again. And then it's out with the razor saw, and we can just saw off the bit we don't need. We'll keep the bit to the rear, obviously, and eventually, as you'll see, these parts will not actually glue to the fuselage. They'll be glued to the cockpit tub, and then all that will be eventually glued into the fuselage. This is the 3D printed control column by Barracuda Studios, and you can see how incredible that looks. And talking of incredible, this is the Laminar Flow Designs cockpit set. Designed for the Spitfire Mk.XIV, but a lot of the bits are relevant and can be used. And you can see how it's presented. This is the undercarriage lever, multiple part thing, and the throttle quadrant, and you can see there's lots of various levers and things. All these get lined up. Being very careful. Ping, there we go. We'll just rescue that eventually, and then this pin will go through, and what it means is the levers will actually move in the throttle quadrant. It's absolutely incredible, that. I decided to paint up the kit instrument panel just to see how it looked. I was very pleased. Could have done a little bit more detail painting and maybe apply some of the decals, but this is the Red Fox Studios 3D printed instrument panel, and it's not a decal. You literally pick it off the backing, and you can see the difference there. And once it's glued in place, it looks absolutely brilliant. Back to the kit parts now. You can see all the lightning holes have been drilled out and cleaned up, and then the kit steel photo etch head armour can just be glued in place. And once that's in, I'm just going to brush on some of the VMS 4K prep. So that's an etch primer for metal, and it works an absolute treat. Brilliant stuff. On to the painting now. Now we're into the fun bit. This is Alclad Duralumin. It's my go-to, actually. It's very ubiquitous in my modelling. That goes on the rear part and actually the front part. So I did use some of the ideas from the Qatari Spitfire instructions, and I thought I'd apply a bit of aluminium at the front, and then that can be masked off, and we can apply some MRP interior green. Same for the sidewalls. We'll just remove that masking. And you can see the demarcation there. Nice and strong. Added a little bit of wiring to that bit. And right, here we go for the seat. So this is MRP red brown on the initial coat. And the rest was brush painted. And talking of brush painting, some more of the details. We're flying through the slides now. A wash is an absolute must, especially in 30-second scale. And this is Starship Filth by Ammo. And I'll just touch that in to all the areas. Now this tone, it's like a greeny, grey, browny tone, very warm tone. And it works really well on the green, but also really well on the painted aluminium parts, as you can see there. So we'll let that dry, and then we'll clean it all off. Here I'm just applying it to the sidewalls. You can see some of the kit parts, some of the resin parts from Barracuda Studios update set. You can see the extra wiring in there. I've done some chipping on some of the parts using a dark brown tone, because any aluminium tone is a bit lost on the light green, if I'm honest. And then, as I mentioned, once it is dry, we can just go in with a cotton bud and just clean it up. Now this little widget you can see there, that had some wiring coming out of it on the original one, but you're not really going to see that, and I don't like wasting effort, if I'm brutally honest. I'll only add the wiring and the detail when I know it's going to be seen quite easily. And that's why you'll see later I didn't add any wiring for the control wires like I did in my Qatari build. And I felt, even though it looks great in the Qatari build, you're not going to see it, if I'm honest. And then we can just blow out any excess wash with the airbrush. Effectively a bit of compressed air. HGW look absolutely brilliant, especially when glued onto the finished seat. And now we can start putting everything together. Now all the components are painted individually. I did glue some bits together for painting, not many though. Just going in with the Tamiya white cap where I can. It's a strong resin type glue. Here's that control column all painted up with the Tamiya part glued on, and that looks an absolute treat. Just a brilliant piece of 3D printing. It's all starting to come together now. Seat has been glued onto the bulkhead, and the seat harness, you can see there's been fed through the gap in the armour. And now we can put the cockpit tub together. It's Tamiya, so it all clicks in very nicely. A little bit fiddly, that part there. I glued it in place slightly out of order actually. The instructions do tell you to glue it in later, but I glued it in earlier. I preferred that. It did work. And then just touching it in with the Ammo extra thin glue. And we'll just make sure that's seated correctly. Pun not intended. And then this aluminium bulkhead right at the very end can go on. And there is the finished cockpit tub, all painted weathered. The aftermarket bits really do lift it to the next level. That's the lower cockpit sidewall on the right hand side. You can see all the extra wiring in there, and then we can just glue that into place. And you can see all the extra wiring and how busy that makes it look. Flexible resin from MDC. The oxygen hose was glued on to the actual oxygen tank. You very rarely see this in models, actually. Modelers doing this. It's a bit of a fiddle trying to feed it all through though. And you can see I've just speeded it up here, so you can see my faff. But it's so worth it. And yes, that oxygen hose is way too long, but it just makes it easier feeding it all through and then bending it back on itself into the scratch-built clips I put on the cockpit sidewall. And you'll see how that looks in the end. A lot of wires getting in the way now as we glue the cockpit tub into the right hand fuselage half. Fits great though, even with all the extra market parts, which, you know, can cause a bit of a faff, but not in this case. They all fit absolutely great. Lots of place to put the glue, and that's going to be a nice sturdy little sub-assembly. You can see the advantage of the brush from the ammo bottle. It's very long and thin, very precise, and it means all the nooks and crannies are very accessible. So what I've done is I've cut down the oxygen hose, I've glued on a bit of brass tubing on the end to act as the connector, and I'm just going to bend that into place and glue that on. Now the other side, again just being careful of the wiring, not too much wiring on the left hand side actually, which is a bit of a relief. And this time I did glue the cockpit sidewall to the cockpit half, just because of all the wiring. It just made it much easier to put all the wiring into place. It's all 3 amp fuse wire, so it bends easily, but it doesn't sort of kink as easy as lead wire does, and I'm using it more and more now actually over the lead wire. So that's it. I'll leave you with a few photos, and I'll see you in the next episode where we actually build the model and do the conversion. So I'll see you then. Cheers, bye bye.